Hello students, now we are going to see the subject of commerce. Unit 2, forms of business organization. For previous class we have saw introduction to Hindu undivided family, meaning and definition of partnership, partnership deed and its contents. Now we are going to see rights and duties of partners, types of partners, procedure for registration, drawbacks of non-registration of partnership, and the last topic is dissolution of partnership. The first topic is rights and duties of partners. Here, the mutual rights and obligations are usually stated in the partnership deed. In the absence of any deed, the provisions of the Partnership Act as stated below will apply. So, under this, the first one is rights of partners. Under this, the first point is right to take part in business. That means every partner has a right to take part in the management of the business. The second right is right to be consulted. That means every partner has the right to be consulted in all the matters concerning the firm. The decision of the majority will prevail in all the routine matters. And the third right is right of access to books, record and document. Here, every partner has the right of access to all records and books of accounts and to examine and copy them. And the fourth right is right to share profit. Every partner is entitled to share the profits in the agreed ratio. If no profit sharing ratio is specified in the deed, they must be shared equally. And the fifth right is right to receive interest. A partner has the right to receive interest on loans advanced by him to the firm at the agreed rate, and where no rate is stipulated, interest at 6% per annum is allowed. And the sixth right is right to be indemnified. Every partner has the right to be indemnified by the firm for all acts of other partners in the ordinary course of the business. He has a further right to receive back any amount spent by him on behalf of the firm. And the seventh right is right to use partnership property for the business. It means every partner has the right to use partnership property for the purpose of the partnership. That is called to be as a right to use partnership property for the business. The seventh point is right to retire. Every partner has a right to retire as per the terms of the deed or with the consent of the other partners. In case of partnership at will, he can retire at any time by giving prior notice to the other partners. And the ninth right is right to continue. Every partner has a right to continue in the firm. He cannot be expelled except in accordance with the partnership deed. These are the rights. Now we are going to see the duties of partner. Under this, the first point is duty to carry on business. That means every partner has to carry on the business of the firm to the maximum advantage of all the partners. The second duty is duty to be true. Every partner must be true, just and faithful to one another. There must be utmost good faith and fair dealings. And the third duty is duty to render true accounts. A partner is bound to keep and render true and full accounts of the partnership. He must produce relevant vouchers for the expenses incurred by him and hand over to the firm all amounts which have come into his hands as a partner. And the next one is duty to indemnity the firm. Every partner must indemnify the firm for any loss caused by his fraud or willful negligence in the conduct of the business. And the fifth duty is duty to share the loss. Every partner is bound to share the losses in the agreed ratio. In the absence of an agreed ratio, it must be borne equally. And the next one is duty to claim remuneration. No partner, including a managing partner, is entitled to any remuneration, that is salary or commission, for the work done by him, unless there is an agreement to the contrary. And the next one is duty not to use firm's property for personal use. That means the partnership property belongs to all partners. but a partner should not use the partnership property for his private purposes. And the next one is duty not to carry on competing business. No partner can carry on a competing business. If he does so, he should surrender to the firm all profits earned by him in such business. And the next point is duty to act within scope of his authority. A partner must act within the scope of his authority. And the last point is duty to consult other partners before assigning or transferring his interest in partnership. No partner can assign or transfer without the consent of all other partners his interest in the firm to any other person so as to make him a partner thereof. So these are all about the duties of partners. The next one is liabilities of partner. Under this, the first point is joint and several liabilities. Every partner is jointly and severally liable for all acts of the firm. It means that in case the assets are inadequate for meeting the claims of creditors, even their personal properties should be made available. The creditors can recover their claims from all the partners. And the second liability is liable for any loss to third party. Under this, the firm is liable for any loss caused to a third party because of a wrongful act done in the ordinary course of business. It means that every partner is liable. And the last liability is liability to third party to make good the loss. Where a partner receives money or property from a third party on behalf of the firm and misappropriates it, then the firm is liable to make good the loss. These are all the liabilities of partner. The next topic is types of partnership. Under this, it is classified into partnership at will, partnership for fixed period of time, particular partnership, and limited liability partnership. Now we are going to see partnership at will. That means it is a partnership formed for an indefinite period. The time period for the purpose of the firm is not mentioned at the time of its formation. It can continue for any length of time depending upon the will of the partners. It can be dissolved by any partner by giving a notice to the other partners of his desire to quit the firm. That is called to be as a partnership at will. The next one is partnership for a fixed term. That means when the duration of a partnership is fixed by partners, such partnership may be dissolved before expiry of the fixed term with the consent of all the partners. Such partnership comes to an end on the expiry of that term. That is called to be as a partnership for a fixed term. The third one is particular partnership. When a partnership is formed for a particular period or for a particular venture, it is called particular partnership. In such a case, the partnership is automatically dissolved at the expiry of the fixed term or on the completion of the venture. This is called particular partnership. And the last one is limited liability partnership. Limited liability partnership is very popular in the service sector and in the small scale business enterprises. Limited liability partnership means for paying the debts of the firm, only the assets of the business will be utilized and not the personal properties. It is prevalent among popular professionals such as cost accountants, company secretaries, chartered accountants, lawyers, architects, engineers, and doctors. Limited liability partnership is available in countries like USA, Singapore, Thailand, and UK. It came into existence in India since 2008. The next topic we are going to see types of partners. Under this, active partner, sleeping partner, nominal partner, secret partner, partner in profit only, partner by estoppel, partner by holding out, and minor partner. These are the types of partners which has taken place. Now we are going to see the first one is active partners. So here, a partner who takes active part in the management of the activities of the partnership business is known as active partner. Active partner is also known as working partner. He may play the role of a manager, organizer, or controller of the partnership firm. The active partner has unlimited liability. The next one is sleeping partner. A partner who is not active, who does not take part in the activities of partnership business, is known as sleeping partner. He contributes capital and he has a share in the firm. He has unlimited liability and he is also known as a dormant partner. The third one is nominal partner. A partner who does not contribute to the capital of the firm but is willing to allow himself to be represented as a partner of the firm is known as nominal partner. He is not entitled to take part in the management of a firm and he does not share the profits or losses of the firm. He becomes liable to the outsiders for the debts of the firm. This is called to be as a nominal partner. The next one is partner in profit only. When partner is admitted into partnership firm with a special agreement that he is entitled to share profits of the firm but not in the losses. He contributes capital of the firm but he has no right to take part in the activities of the business firm. The ability of such partner is unlimited. This is called to be as a partner in profit only. The next, partner by estoffel. A person is considered a partner by estoffel if, through his or her own initiative, conduct or behavior, he or she gives an impression to others that he or she is a partner of the firm. Such partners are held liable for the debts of the firm because in the eyes of the third party, they are considered partners even though they do not contribute to the capital. So this is all about the partner by estoffel. The next, partner by holding out. A person who by conduct or words represents or allows him or herself to be represented as a partner in a firm is liable for the credit or loans obtained by firm on the basis of such representation. He is also called presumption of partnership. The next is secret partner. This type of partner contributes capital and takes active part in the management of the firm's business. He shares in the profits and losses of firm and his liability is unlimited. However, his connection with the firm is not known to the outside world. He is called to be as a secret partner. And the last one is minor as a partner. Generally, a minor cannot be a partner. But if a partner is dead, his or her sons or daughters can be partners of the business. They can enjoy the facilities and profits. But as they are minors, they do not need to bear the responsibility of the business. So this is called minor as a partner, and these are all about the types of partners. The next, we are going to see the registration of partnership. The Indian Partnership Act does not make the registration of a partnership compulsory. Registration is optional, but the disabilities of non-registration virtually make it compulsory. So here for registering, some of the procedures have given. Under this, the first one is it should mention the name of the firm. The second one, the principal place of business. And the third one, name of other places where the firm carried on business. And the fourth one is names and addresses of all the partners. And the fifth one is the date on which each partner joined the firm. And the last one is the duration of the firm. So here, this statement should be signed by all the partners and should be produced to the registrar of firms along with the necessary registration fee. Any change in the above particulars must be communicated to the registrar within 14 days of such alteration. So this is all about the registration of partnership and its procedures. Now we are going to see drawbacks of non-registration of partnership. Under this, the first point is no right to file suit against others. That means an unregistered firm cannot file a suit to enforce its claims against third parties if such rights arise out of a contract. For example, no court of action is possible to recover debts from third parties. And the second drawback is right to sue for right arising. However, it can sue others for enforcing rights arising otherwise than out of a contract. For example, it can bring a suit for wrongful infringement of trademark of patent. That is called to be as a right to sue for right arising. The third one is right to third parties to sue the firm. That means the rights of third parties against the firm are not affected by non-registration. It means that they can sue the firm or any of its partners. A partner of an unregistered firm cannot sue the firm or other partners for enforcing its rights under the partnership deed. However, his right to sue for the dissolution of the firm or for the accounts of a dissolved firm or for his share in the assets of a dissolved firm is not affected by the non-registration. That is called to be as a right of third parties to sue the firm. Thus, in short, non-registration does not affect the following rights. For example, the first one is suit not exceeding ₹100. The second point is the rights of firm or partners of a firm having no place of business in India. And the third point is the power of an official assignee or receiver to realize the property of an insolvent partner. And the fourth one is suit arising otherwise than out of contract as explained above. And the fifth right is the right of third parties against the firms or any of its partners. And the last point is suit by a partner for the dissolution of the firm or for accounts of a dissolved firm or for a share in the assets of a dissolved firm as stated above. The next topic is dissolution of partnership. Dissolution of partnership is different from dissolution of partnership firm. It is due to the fact that when the relation present between all partners comes to an end, it is known as dissolution of firm. When any one of the partners become incapacitated, then the partnership comes to an end, but the firm may continue to operate if new partnership is arranged among the other partners. Under this, the first one is dissolution of firm. Dissolution of firm means dissolution of partnership. On dissolution of firm, partnership business comes to an end. Its assets are realized and the creditors are paid off. The business cannot be continued after dissolution of partnership firm. For example, A, B and C are partners in a business. If all the three partners decide to dissolve, it is known as dissolution of the firm. The next one is dissolution of partnership. Dissolution of partnership means the termination of the original partnership agreement. A partnership is dissolved by insolvency, retirement, expiry or completion of the term of partnership. The business will continue after dissolution of partnership. For example, A, B and C are partners in a business. If A retires, B and C can continue the business, which is known as dissolution of partnership. Next, the various circumstances leading to dissolution of partnership firm can be summarized by taking the first letters used in the term dissolution. Here, the first D denotes death of partner and I denotes incapacity of a partner. S denotes stipulated period of partnership completed in the case of particular partnership. And again S denotes serious misconduct of a partner. And O denotes object is completed. L denotes lunacy of a partner. And U denotes unavoidable continuous loss. T denotes transfer of interest of the firm. And I denotes insolvency of a partner. O denotes objectionable unlawful objectives. And N denotes notice of dissolution by a partner. The fundamental difference between the dissolution of partnership and dissolution of the firm is that when the partnership is dissolved, there is no other dissolution. But when the firm is dissolved, partnership too comes to an end. Here, the dissolution of partnership can take the following forms. Under this, the first one is change in the existing profit sharing ratio, admission of a partner, retirement or death of a partner, insolvency of a partner, expiry of the term of the partnership, completion of the specified venture, and the last one is dissolution by agreement. Here, now we can see the dissolution of firm. It is classified into two, that is without order of court and by order of court. Without order of court, it is classified into mutual agreement, compulsory dissolution on the occurrence of contingencies, and by notice. Here, the compulsory dissolution is classified into insolvency of all except one partner and business becoming unlawful. By order of court, it is classified into insanity, permanent incapacity, misconduct, breach of agreement, transfer of interest, perpetual losses, and any other just and equitable ground. The next, dissolution of partnership firm is taken place in two ways. The first one is without the order of the court and by order of the court. Now we are going to see without the order of the court. Under this, the first one is by agreement or mutual consent. Here, a firm may be dissolved when all the partners agree to close the affairs of the firm. Just as a partnership is created by contract, it can also be terminated by contract. And the second one is by insolvency of all the partners but one. If any one of the partners adjudged and insolvent, that is, if all the partners become insolvent, it is necessary to dissolve the firm. The next one is when the objective becomes illegal. When the business carried on by the partnership becomes illegal, the partnership firm is automatically dissolved. And the fourth point is by notice of dissolution. That means in the case of partnership at will, when any partner gives in writing to all the other partners indicating his intention to dissolve the firm will be dissolved. And the last one is on certain contingencies. Here, dissolution of partnership itself may involve the dissolution of the firm unless parties agree to continue it, otherwise it will take place. For example, on the expiry of a specified period in case of partnership for a fixed term. The second one is on the completion of a particular adventure for which it has been formed in case of particular partnership. And the third one is on the death of a partner, then on the retirement of a partner, then on this insolvency of a partner. In all the above cases, if the business is not continued by the remaining partners, dissolution of the firm takes place automatically in this certain contingencies. And the last one is dissolution through court. The court may order dissolution of a firm at a suit of a partner in any of the following circumstances. Under this, the first one is when a partner becomes insane, and the second one is permanent incapacity of any partner, and the third one is misconduct of any partner, and the fourth one is breach of agreement which makes the business impracticable, and the fifth one is transfer of interest to third person, and the sixth one is continued loss, and the last point is when the court finds that it is just and equitable to dissolve the firm. These are the circumstances in dissolution through court. The next lesson, Unit 2, Forms of Business Organization. Under this, we are going to see joint stock company. Here, so many subtopics are given. The first one is meaning and definition of a company, types of companies, memorandum of association, articles of association, and the last topic is prospectus. Now, we are going to see the meaning and definition of a company. Here, it is given the meaning of joint stock company. That means company means it is an artificial person which is created by law having a separate legal entity with perpetual succession and a common seal. The capital of a company is divided into a number of shares of equal value. Members of the company holding one or more shares are called to be as the company shareholders. So this is the meaning of joint stock company. The next is definition of company. A company is an association of many persons who contribute money or money's worth to a common stock and employ it in some trade or business and who share the profits or loss arising therefrom. This was said by Lord Linley. And the second definition was, a company is an artificial person created by law having a separate entity with a perpetual succession and a common seal. This is given by Companies Act 2013 according to section 2. These are the definitions for company. The next is characteristics of a company. Under this, it includes, the first one is separate legal entity, limited liability, perpetual succession, common seal, transferability of shares, separate property, one share, one vote. These are the different characteristics which comes under this company. Now we are going to see separate legal entity. It has an entity separate from its members. Any of its members can enter into contracts with it in the same manner as any other individual can. The company's money and property belong to the company and not to the shareholders. Similarly, the company's debt are the debts of the company. So this is all about the separate legal entity. The second one is limited liability. Limited liability means the owners or shareholders only lose the value of their investment in the business if the business goes bankrupt. They are not personally liable for any debts of the company. The third one is perpetual succession. Members may come and go, but the company can go on forever. It continues to exist even if all its members are dead. This was said by Lord Gower. The existence of company can be terminated only by law. For example, all members of a private company were killed by a bomb while in a general meeting held. The company continues to exist through the legal heirs of the deceased parties or member. That is called to be as a perpetual succession. The fourth one is separate property. That means a company is a distinct legal entity. A member cannot claim to be owner of the company's property during the existence of the company. This is called to be as a separate property. The next one is transferability of shares. The shares of a public company are freely transferable and members can dispose of their shares whenever they like without seeking any permission from the company or from the other members. But in a private company, however, some restriction on the right to transfer shares is essential in its articles as per section 3 subsection 1 and subsection 3 of the Companies Act 1956. This is all about the transferability of shares. The next one is common seal. A company, being an artificial person, cannot work as a natural being. Therefore, it has to work through its directors, officers and other employees. So, common seal is used as an official signature of a company. For example, Satyam case, use of company letterhead for the official communication. This is called common seal. The next one is separate management. A company is administered and managed by its managerial personnel, that is the board of directors. The shareholders are simply the holders of the shares in the company and they need not necessarily the managers of the company. This is called separate management. And the last one is one share, one vote. The principle of voting in a company is one share, one vote. That is, if a person has 10 shares, he has 10 votes in the company. This is in direct contrast to the voting principle of a cooperative society, whereas the one member, one vote principle applies. That is, irrespective of the number of shares held, one member has only one vote. The last one is capacity to sue and being sued. That means a company can sue or be sued in its own name as distinct from its members. Thus, these are all about the characteristics of a company. Now, we are going to see the advantages of joint stock company. Under this, the first point is large capital. That means a company can secure large capital compared to a sole trader or partnership. Large amount of capital is necessary for conducting business on a large scale. For example, Reliance has invested more than 25,000 crore in its telecom venture. Raising such huge amount of funds would be utterly impossible in a sole proprietorship or partnership. Thus, large capital is considered to be as an advantage of joint stock company. The next advantage is limited liability. Limited liability means the owners or shareholders only lose the value of their investment in the business if the business goes bankrupt. They are not personally liable for any debts of the company. This is called to be as a limited liability. And the next one is transferability of shares. It means the shares of a public company are freely transferable and members can dispose of their shares whenever they like without seeking any permission from the company or from the other members. In a private company, however, some restriction on the right to transfer shares is essential in its articles as per section 3 subsection 1 and subsection 3 of the Companies Act of 1956. This is all about the transferability of shares. The next one is perpetual succession. So here perpetual succession means member may come and go but the company can go on forever. It continues to exist even if all its members are dead. The existence of a company can be terminated only by law. For example, all members of a private company were killed by a bomb while in a general meeting held. The company continues to exist through the legal heirs of the deceased parties or member. This is called to be as a perpetual succession. The next one is promotion of saving and investment habit. That means joint stock company system encourages people to save. Even small amount can be used for the purchase of shares. A person can buy even one share of a company. The next point is risk bearing capacity. The loss of the company is distributed over a large number of shareholders. So each shareholder bears a very little amount of loss. Hence the company form of organization has risk bearing capacity. The next point is economies of large scale operation. A joint stock company can undertake business on large scale. As a result, it can derive all the advantages of large scale production. For example, Hero Motor Corporate Limited 2015, the world's largest seller of two-wheelers, manufactures motorbikes on a large scale and is able to enjoy cost efficiency. So this is all about the economies of large scale operation. And the last advantage is economic development. Here, the joint stock company system has been responsible for the rapid growth of industries and trade in many countries. Since joint stock companies have large financial resources, they are able to undertake large-scale production, satisfy the needs of more number of consumers, create large-scale employment opportunities, promote balanced regional development, and contribute substantially to the government by way of taxes. These are all about the advantages of company. Now we are going to see the disadvantages of company. Under this, the first point is costly and difficult to form. Number of legal formalities must be observed in the formation of the company. To observe these legal formalities, promoters have to spend much time and money. And the second disadvantage is scope for dishonest and unscrupulous management. That means the directors manage the company with the help of paid officers. If the directors are dishonest, they may make personal gain at the expense of the company. They may misuse their power and position. This is called scope for dishonest and unscrupulous management. The next one is management oligarchy. A few rich persons may secure control over the affairs of the company. Thus, the management of a joint stock company might become oligarchic in character. Oligarchy means a small group of people having control. And the fourth point is speculation. Speculation means a few individuals may corner the shares to gain control over the company. The next point is lack of interest. Here, the lack of interest means the officers of the company do not have incentive to work hard. They are not usually inclined to take risk. They lack initiative. That is called to be as a lack of interest. The next point is lack of good labor relations. In sole trading business, personal supervision is possible, but in company form of organization, there is lack of personal contact between owners and workers. As a result, there is scope for more industrial disputes in a company form of organization. And the last point is high taxation. That means joint stock companies have to pay tax at higher rates compared to other forms of organization. So these are all about the disadvantages of the company. The next one is assignment. Write the procedure for registration of a firm. Write the procedure for registration of a firm. And the second question is, what are the advantages of the company? What are the advantages of the company?